All right, this is a mini video lecture on the different types of nonverbals. You can find this on page 206 in your textbook. All right, I have them listed here on this handout. This is actually located in the modules in the classroom. There are 9 different nonverbals that we're going to talk about. All right, the nonverbal communication portion of how we communicate plays a large role in how we actually interpret the intended message. All right, so we can have nonverbal cues related to physical appearance. These are manipulated cues related to the body. So I'm going to give you key words here to circle, and this will be very helpful for your final exam. So physical appearance manipulated cues related to the body could include hairstyle, clothing, and cosmetics. All right, to provide you an example of this, my daughters are about 2 years and 2 months apart in age. At one point in time, Hannah, the youngest, was as tall as Emily, and people would ask me all the time if they were twins. Then sometime about 5th or 6th grade, 7th grade, Hannah grew a lot taller than Emily. So kind of think about the physical appearance of the youngest daughter, Hannah, being taller than the oldest daughter, Emily. Where even to this day, because of Hannah's tallness, is that people make conclusions just based on that physical appearance that Hannah is the oldest, when in fact she is the youngest. Number 2 is kinesics. Kinesics has to do messages sent by the body. Circle the word gestures. So these are gestures that we give off. Maybe movement in your face, body movement, posture, gait, gaze, and facial expressions. The really cool thing about your face is that you have about 44 different muscles, 45 different muscles in your face, 22 on one side, 22 on the other, and then your forehead muscle is the 45th muscle. Think about your use of your hands, waving goodbye, giving a thumbs up, a thumbs down. Your posture, is it very rigid? Is it relaxed? Your gaze, your eye contact. How long do you allow someone to actually look at you? So if we think about in a doctor's office situation, the doctor gazing at you, at your leg, at your arm, or at your face, does not give any negative connotations. But if you're out and about in town and someone continues to gaze and to stare at you, we may actually perceive negative connotations if we do not know that person. Also, your gait, how fast or how slow you walk, or even how you walk, actually gives off nonverbal symbols. All right, your vocalics, which is your voice, which we talked about in the previous video with the 8 elements of voice. We're just going to quickly go over these, but voice has to do with paralanguage or the paralinguistic, okay? Paralinguistic means everything over the language, which would be any vocal cues that we use to determine the meaning of the message. So if I aggressively speak to you and say the actual symbols, stop it, and I say, stop it, is that we may perceive that as, okay, I want this person to stop now. That's what they want me to do. I'm actually looking at the denotative, but also applying the connotative as it relates to the way that they say it. But if I change up this particular word symbol with my vocalics and I say, stop it, that's totally different than the first one. The second one comes off more as a flirting behavior, that I'm saying the word symbol, stop it, but the way my voice sounds gives an indication that I'm flirting with the other person. All right, number 4 is haptics. This is contact cues or touch behaviors. We place connotations on them based on frequency, intensity, and type of touch. Okay. I relate this to also the connotations on who, what, when, where, and why, if haptics behaviors are appropriate or inappropriate. There are some haptics behavior that are totally appropriate in some settings, where in other settings they would not be. And I'm giving the example of in male sports, if somebody does something well, they'll actually slap or tap that person on the butt. All right, in this setting, that particular touch behavior, haptics, is totally appropriate. But if we move that behavior outside of the sports arena, and let's take it to the classroom, if you do something excellent and a teacher comes and pats or slaps you on the butt in a congratulatory manner, is that more than likely you're going to perceive that as inappropriate. So we've got to think about frequency, intensity, and type of touch. For example, with intensity, if Brian hauled off with all his power and took his palm of his hand and smacked me right in the face, we would perceive that as negative. But if he takes the palm of his hand and he places it on my face, the intensity is way less, as that might be perceived as more positive. Also, we have olfactory, which are smell cues, which has to do with odors and fragrances. Can we tell something is burning before we actually see it? Yeah, because we can smell the smoke. Can we tell that the milk is sour before we taste it? Oh yeah, because it smells rancid and sour. Can we tell that the meat is not good to eat, that it's rotten, before we even see it because of the way it smells? Olfactory and haptics are very primitive forms of nonverbals, but as we can see, some smell cues can actually save us from eating or drinking anything that would be dangerous for us. All right, number 6 is accoutrements. Accoutrements has to do with object language. These are manipulation of objects in our environment. For example, designer clothes. Okay, so if I had Jimmy Choo shoes or Louis Vuitton, or any other, like a Bentley or a Bugatti car or anything, is that I'm using that possibly as a status symbol. Is that these are manipulating cues in the environment. If you go to a sporting event, do you know who supports what team? Yeah, because of the apparel that they have on. All right, proxemics has to do with space. Okay, these are spatial cues. This is the distance between yourself and the other person and who you allow in those spaces. So this is interpersonal distance, territory, and other spacing relationships. For example, if you think about your property, you put a fence around your property, that's maintaining your space. Even in your house, there is a possibility you have your own space. Even just right now, we're doing what's called social distancing, which this has to do with proxemics, as we're creating a wide space between ourselves and somebody else. Also, right now, you're supposed to say at least 6 feet as far as spacing away from somebody else. So when we think about spacing, we can use it actually to look bigger, like putting your arms out, keeping a person at arm's length, or we can actually create close spacing. The more that you know someone, the more that you allow them into your personal space. All right, number 8 is proxemics. This has to do with elements of time and the use of time as a messaging system. For example, if you are late for your job interview, can that say something about you without you having to say anything? Will you be a dependable employee? Also, if we think about chronemics, we can look at it as a point in time, for example, like 9 p.m., or a duration of time, 2 weeks. For example, we've been doing the social distancing and quarantining for about 30 days now. So we would equate that to be a long time, but even a point on a clock, okay? If I receive myself a phone call at this point in my life after 12 midnight, is that because of the point in time, I actually perceive that phone call as possibly going to be negative than any other phone call that I received during the day. 2 weeks is a long time, but 30 days is a long time. That's like me telling you this past year is that Brian and I have been married for 24 years. So without saying anything, I'm using time to tell you something about our relationship, as we've been together for a long time. We actually dated possibly about 2 years prior to this, so we've been together for a total of 26 years, dating and then married. Lastly, we have tacit as a nonverbal. This is using silence as a communicator. Just kind of think about this is what if somebody ever said, I'm not talking to you anymore. So they're using silence as a punishment. Also, what if at a wedding you heard, speak now, forever hold your peace. So at that point, with nobody talking, then nobody objects to the wedding. Or if a teacher says, does anybody have any questions? And everybody is silent, then the teacher concludes that everybody got the same message. All right, so this is a short tutorial about nonverbals and the types of nonverbals. You can refer to page 206. We have physical appearance, kinesics, vocalics, haptics, olfactory, accoutrements, proxemics, chronemics, and the last one is silence. This ends speech notes